Good morning. It is Monday, December 30th, in the soon-to-be-ended year of 2024. I'm Thomas Caldwell of the Aurelian Column, and this is the Monday Morning Report. Well, the big news this morning is that later yesterday, Jimmy Carter, the 39th President of the United States, finally passed away at the age of 100. Quite a significant run by anyone's standards. Anyways, Mr. Carter was an extremely controversial president for many reasons. Over the next few months and years, you're going to be seeing detailed critiques of his life, which is what happens when you end up being president. The reality is, for someone who came to age when he was in office and promptly left the United States because of it, well, he was a very nice and good man who should never have been president, ever. A lot of the ills that we have today are because of him, but not by bad intentions. It's kind of a strange situation. This is when we talk about people's purpose in existence. If you're meant to be a CPA, don't be a rock star. And if you're meant to be a rock star, don't be a CPA. To his credit, the late president was an accomplished naval officer. He graduated from Annapolis, served honorably in the U.S. military, became a nuclear expert in the early days of the nuclear navy under Admiral Hyman Rickover. Went on to climb the ladder, eventually became governor of Georgia, and when the U.S. was in a real messy state in the 1970s, he stepped onto the stage and took over from Gerald Ford, who had taken over from the resigned and disgraced Richard Nixon, and there's a lot of history there. Anyways, the man has departed the scene. A good man, but did not leave a very good legacy behind in terms of his politics. It's kind of funny because he's the one that threw away the Panama Canal. He didn't return it. He threw it away. And this was something that, well, hopefully the incoming administration will do something about if they're serious. Anyways, Mr. President, rest in peace. On to next things. This was a bad week for aviation. A couple of very significant crashes. Or I should say, one was a shoot-down. Russians do shoot down planes from time to time, as they did in the early 1980s with Flight 007 over Sakhalin Island. They shot down a 737 in Azerbaijan. It was hit with shrapnel. A big mistake. They're not taking responsibility, but they're apologizing for it. I'm not really sure what that's all about. A very dramatic and very sad crash in Korea, a Korean-flagged airliner. 179 people killed, 2 survived. And it's probably the most dramatic airline crash video recording ever because you get to see all these people die in front of your eyes. It's probably not going to do much for airline promotion anytime soon. One of the big mistakes that people make is early on, they like to jump to conclusions or guess at what could have happened. In reality, folks, it's best to let the professionals do their job. Air crash investigations are very thorough, very complete, and they're designed to prevent future accidents, thus making everything safer. Just jumping around and guessing as to why something happened, it's best to let the professionals do their job. Guessing is nothing more than, frankly, just a lot of disaster porn in verbal form. At the end of the day, airline crashes are pretty straightforward. Those of you who read a feature piece I did for a newspaper in West Virginia recently, there's a link to it up on my Substack channel, you're dealing with something that is really very straightforward. Guessing is just a way of getting clicks on YouTube or getting ratings on television. So, that being said, it's been a pretty bad time for aviation as of late. Boeing has had all sorts of problems. My goodness, especially that spacecraft. Oh, aren't those astronauts still stranded up at the International Space Station? No one's talked about that. Everyone's forgetting about it. Now, in other news, a story that happened last Monday after my Monday morning report had gone out that still needs to be addressed is the Biden pardons. Those were the ones where all 40 of the people who were on death row, well, 3 of them are left. The other 37 have been commuted to life sentences. This is kind of an interesting thing. It's one thing if the liberal establishment in this country wants to get rid of the death penalty. There's an argument for that. But when you get rid of the death penalty for some people and not for others, that's showing selective killing. The 40 people on death row arguably all deserved it. Now there's only 3 left, and they were involved in acts of what are called racial terrorism. But some of these criminals just are so loathsome and so disgusting, it makes the 3 left over look like saints in terms of their style and their motivations. I'm not going to discuss you with the details of some of these, but if you go through the list of the 37 people, he just, or whoever's behind him, just wanted to, well, make more of a mess for Donald Trump, because Donald Trump says he's going to be coming into office and bring the death penalty back and start getting rid of these people. But they are now going to be sitting in federal prison for decades to come at extreme expense to the American taxpayer, who are already footing the bill for so much nonsense in this country and overseas. But that was a terrible Christmas present for people who have suffered horribly at the hands of these monsters. And now they're going to have an all-expense-paid lifestyle, education, libraries, video games, probably. I'm not sure if that's the case, but they have television. There's no point in that. The next thing is what I call the H-1B virus. That is the special virus visa. I call it the virus visa. That is currently being lauded by none other than Elon Musk and Trump himself. You see, they want immigration. They just want it for people who have useful skills. In other words, skills that could be used to replace current American workers. This has caused quite an uproar in the MAGA camp, as well as mainstream America, at least the people that are following this and watching. It's bad enough that AI is taking away the jobs of many people. Now we're going to be bringing in people from other parts of the world to take our jobs away. This is called betrayal. It hasn't happened yet because Trump is not in office yet. We'll see what happens in a couple of months. But it doesn't look good. It's already bad enough to the people here in this country who've had to suffer at the hands of illegals who've come in and basically committed horrible murders, rapes, robberies, all sorts of things. Now we have to contend with people coming in legally who are there to take away our work. Interesting way to end the year, isn't it? Meanwhile, off in Ukraine, North Korean troops are being slaughtered. You know, the Russians finally did bring those North Korean troops onto the battlefield, and they're using them as literal cannon fodder. They're using them to go into situations where there's no hope for escape. They're suicide troops. They're worthless. There's also some reports from the Ukrainian side that some of these people who are in hopeless situations refuse to surrender. Totally refuse. They just kill themselves or kill each other. One of the more interesting videos I saw that was put up by the Ukrainians are drones going after Korean troops, and they weren't prepared for it. They never saw any such thing. They're still trained up to fight the U.S. military in 1953. It's really sad, but North Koreans are brainwashed to the point where you have to question whether or not that country has any use or its population at this point. One thing you'll find if you see North Koreans, most of them are extremely short because they're so malnourished. It's a nation that shouldn't exist. Again, another interesting way to end the year. Oh, and a few billion dollars are going off to Ukraine again. Biden is going to be shoveling the dollars into that black hole the way a frantic fireman on a old steam locomotive would be shoveling into the coal box of a runaway train. It's a very, very strange situation there, but he's going to keep doing that, and there's no way that money is going to help anyone in Ukraine. The most important thing the incoming administration can do, if not Interpol itself, is to do a complete track as to where that money went, if it's at all possible. Because I'll bet you that the people who are running the U.S. government now have access privately to billions of dollars. The Ukrainian war with Russia has been the greatest money laundering scheme in human history. And the people who do it must be called to account. This has been a very tumultuous year. This is the last Aurelian column Monday morning report of 2024. We have no reason to believe that 2025 is going to be any better, but we also don't have any reason to believe 2025 is going to be any worse. I would like to bring you back in history to the year 1968, which is arguably one of the worst in human history. It was awful. Now, for the United States, it was catastrophic. Martin Luther King, Robert F. Kennedy assassinated, riots in Chicago, the Tet Offensive in Vietnam, the Czech uprising that was crushed by the Russians. It was all over a mess. Protests everywhere, riots everywhere. Most American cities burned in one form or another. And at the end of the year, there was one shining hope, and that was Apollo 8. Apollo 8 was the first known spacecraft, you never know these days, that orbited the moon, the first time humans were able to leave the gravity of planet Earth. And that beautiful picture you see of the Earth rising over the moon, that was taken by Apollo 8. And that was a massively fascinating thing to see when you were a young boy, as I was at the time. When that picture came back and the film got developed, it was just breathtaking. It just made the whole year kind of go away. Now, the next year that happened was 1969, and a lot of good things happened that year. There were some bad things. Good things happened. We landed on the moon for real. We did. Yes, we did. The New York Mets won the World Series, which some people think was even a much more significant accomplishment. Woodstock happened, and for good or for ill, and I think it was more good than ill, it was a major cultural achievement in the United States. It's amazing that 500,000 people can get together and not slaughter each other, huh? Which I believe was the number that they calculated it. Anyways, 1969 was a lot better than 1968. We've had a few 1968s, and 2024 was obviously one of them. But we did have a bright, shining light where we got rid of the Democratic Party in the White House. Kamala Harris, who's thankfully vanished from the scene, we haven't heard from her in a while, didn't make it into 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. But remember that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. Now, that being said, there are many challenges the United States is going to go through in the coming months and years. But one thing is certain for those of you who study history, and history is always something that gets looped into what I do here, I think it's important to remember that no matter how crazy things get, and not just for the United States, but for the world in general, there's usually a way for the sun to make it back around and rise in the morning. Sometimes it takes longer than you would want, and sometimes longer than you'd think, but all in all, if you wait around long enough and if you keep moving, things eventually get better. The old saying was, when you find yourself going through hell, what you need to do is to keep going. Don't give up. Never, never give up. So goodbye to 2024, and let's hope for the best for 2025. That's it for today. If you appreciate my work, please like, subscribe, share with your friends, and share with your enemies. I welcome feedback. My email address is feedback@aureliancolumn.com. That's feedback@aureliancolumn.com. I'm up on X. My handle there is MICCAMPEN. That's MICCAMPEN. I'm also up on Telegram. The Aurelian Column is there. And I'm on a few other social media platforms, but not, nor ever, Facebook. This podcast and my written work and my photography appears on Substack. The address there is aureliancolumn.substack.com. Until we meet again, be good, be safe, be vigilant. A happy new year to everyone. But still, Clown World and the Deep State must be destroyed. Good day.